Hi, Mr. P. It's good to have you back.
Good to be back.
How are you feeling since the evaluation last week?
Good.
Your ribs
Same.
Your ribs are doing better?
Yeah, ribs are
Good.
much better.
Good to hear.
Thank you.
So today we're just going to go over your results from your evaluation last week. And I'm going to start with going over the hearing screening and then go over a few of the assessments that we went through. Feel free to jump in if you have any questions.
Okay.
So let's start by going over your hearing screening. We did have some concerns about your hearing based on you reported that you had noticed your hearing hadn't been the same. You couldn't hear birds chirping. And so when we did the hearing screening, we actually found that you did fail to hear or to detect the tones in the higher frequencies, the 2,000 and 4,000 hertz. Mm-hmm. And so you did well with the lower frequencies, and a minimum 35 dB threshold is generally what is typical for the adult population. That's like the normal threshold, and dB or decibels is like the loudness at which you're hearing it. And you didn't hear the higher frequencies at 2,000 and 4,000 hertz until around 80 to 90 decibels. So we just have some concerns about your hearing of the higher frequencies, and so it's recommended that you see an audiologist if possible before starting BSAP this summer. I know there's not a lot of time in between, but we just want to make sure that if there is a hearing loss in those higher frequencies, that you're able to get some assistance for that.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
And do you feel that these findings are consistent with some changes in your hearings that you reported?
Yes. Higher noises are hard to hear.
Okay.
So, yes.
Okay. So I'm glad that we went over that. The next thing I wanted to go over was the short screening tool that we went over at the beginning, and that was the geriatric depression scale, and that was when we asked you some questions about your mood. And it's 15 yes/no questions that are highly correlated with depressive symptoms in the older population. And of the questions, 6 of the 15, your answers were indicative of depression. And so the certain items that we were more concerned about is that you had reported you felt generally unsatisfied with your life, you had dropped many of your activities and interests, and you often felt bored, and sometimes even helpless. And other answers, though, were indicative of a more positive outlook and resilience, and those you had reported that you often felt in good spirits and happy most of the time, and that you did not feel hopeless, and that you felt that others weren't better off than you were. And so because your score was greater than 5, it is recommended that you see a clinical psychologist for a follow-up, a more comprehensive evaluation, just to rule out depression. Anytime there's a score greater than 5, it is suggested that you are seen for further evaluation. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have depression. This is just a screening tool. But we just want to make sure that you are getting all the services that you need to see improvements.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. Do you have any questions about the results of that?
No, that sounds about right.
Okay. All right. So then the next assessment that I wanted to go over was the Boston naming test. And I know we did a lot of naming of objects and pictures, but this was the assessment where you were naming about 60 different objects, and they were black and white pictures, and you actually went through them fairly fast. And so one of your strengths actually was that, especially for the shorter, simpler words at the beginning, the more familiar items, you responded really quickly within 0 to 1 seconds. And then you didn't really have difficulty or like finding the word to name the object until I think it was only about 4 words, it looks like, that you had difficulty recalling. And even when we gave you cues, those didn't seem to help. Semantic cues, where we kind of described maybe what the object, gave like a little hint about the object, they helped in one of those, you were able to get the correct answer. And then phonemic cues, where we gave you the initial sound or sounds, those didn't seem to help at all. Is that kind of what you felt like as well?
Yeah,
during the assessment?
It helps to have a clue
A clue?
to meaning.
Okay. So having someone give you like the first sounds doesn't help.
No.
Okay. And then
usually.
we also noticed that when you were given the written words, that you did really well with those. Then you were able to identify what word it was that you were trying to find.
Yes.
Okay.
It's good.
It's helpful to have them written out.
Yes.
Yeah, your reading is really good. I'd say that was one of your strengths. And then something else we found during this assessment was that of the words that you were able to get out, which was a majority of them, you got 56 out of 60. Was that 22 of those responses there were like phonological errors, and so you'd get most of the sounds in the word correct, so we knew what word you were trying to say. But what I think is contributing to your decreased intelligibility is that some of those sounds are not the correct sounds, and I think that has to do a lot with like your apraxia, and so you know what you want to say and you get it out, but it's not intelligible.
Yes.
And so an example of that was for the word snail, you said tail instead. And so that gives us good information on stuff that we could work on during this summer BSAP program. And then the other assessment that I wanted to go over was the final assessment of the evaluation, and that was the aphasia bank materials. And that's when we had you describe a series of pictures and do a story retell of the Cinderella story, which I know you enjoyed. But those pictures you had, we haven't gotten the results, they're not available yet, but some observations that we did have about your speech during that time, especially your conversational speech and your storytelling skills, it looks like your intelligibility during conversation is way more reduced than when you're just recalling or like naming a picture.
Yeah.
And so it appeared that your conversational speech was characterized by it's like short and choppy, and you lose a lot of those smaller, shorter connector words that help make speech a lot more smooth and easier to understand. So that could also contribute to your decreased intelligibility. And overall, though, your strengths were that you did great with describing the series of pictures in a logical order and having a story with a middle, beginning, and end. Or a beginning, middle, and end, sorry. And so overall, do you have any questions about your results?
Oh, good. This is all good.
Okay. Based on your results, we do think you're a really good candidate for attending the summer BSAP program. I know that you had said that since you discontinued services at community that you felt like maybe your speech had just stayed the same and you weren't seeing any improvements. And I think the summer will provide you a lot of opportunities to practice your speech, and especially opportunities to talk with new people. And I know that there'll be a lot of fun outings planned, so it'll give you even more experience talking in the community and getting out and doing things that you want to be doing again.
Great. Excited.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. And just so you know, I know you've got about 1 to 2 weeks in between starting BSAP, between now and then. And something that I would encourage you to do is to maybe go out with your wife and practice talking in those settings outside of the home, because I think practicing is what's going to get you more functional language and the ease of communication. And then I do also have 2 resources for you that you can do at home. One is morespeech.com, and that's something that will give you practice words and can help you with naming objects. And then another is an app, because I know you have an iPad, and it's Sounds of Speech. It does cost $10, but with your apraxia and some of those errors where you can't articulate the sound, this gives you pictures or videos of the mouth placements for each sound.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming and talking with me today.
Thank you.